So in order for our temperature range class to become the data source for our picker view, we have to make some changes. So let's go ahead and um, instead of importing Foundation, and Foundation is just the Swift toolkit, just basic Swift commands, we have to implement UI kit, which is User Interface Kit. That'll give us access to things like view controllers and so on. Our temperature range also has to inherit from NS object. An NS object is a very generic class that will allow us to access the UI picker view data source. Okay? So in order to implement that, I have to add that here, UI picker view data source. Okay? So now this is saying that the temperature range inherits from NS object and implements the UI picker view data source protocol. So because this is now our picker view data source, our view controller does not need to be the data source anymore. So I can actually remove that protocol from there. Since this line provides the temperature values, I can copy that. So let's take that, let's cut that and put it in our temperature range as a property. Now it can no longer be private. Since remember, private means that only methods can access it from within that class. But since other classes like view controller need access to this, it can't be private anymore. So we'll take out that private designation. Okay, so we've got that done. And because we have temperature range and temperature values, they would be redundant if we kept them both in. So since our class is temperature range, let's just make this, let's just make this values. So when I call it, it'll be temperature range dot values, which would make a lot more sense semantically. Okay, and then let's go ahead and go back to our view controller, and let's get our number of components and return rows. And let's put those in our temperature range. And notice that we have to make this values, not temperature values anymore, so we'll update that. So now our temperature range as the data source creates the values, returns the number of components, and it gives a count of the number of values in the array, which is exactly what we want it to do. Let's go back to our view controller, and we see a couple of errors. So it's looking for temperature values, but since we moved it, it does not see that anymore. So in order to fix that, let's go back to our main storyboard. I'm going to put on the assistant editor. Remember, it's the temperature range object that is now the data source. So since that's controlling the data source, I need to create an outlet to it, to my view controller class. So let's go ahead and create an outlet for our temperature range object. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to control drag to my view controller class. I'm going to type in temperature range as the name of the object or the outlet. Hit connect, and you can see I now have a temperature range object. So now, instead of doing temperature values, I'll replace them with the use of my new object or outlet I created, temperature range dot values. I'll do the same here. Temperature range dot values row. So now I'm using the information from my temperature range object to access the array of values, since that is now my data source. And I have no errors. Let's go ahead and run this. Okay, I'll change it. And it looks like the functionality is exactly the same as it was before. Let's see if I can get to a number that just to make sure it works correctly. 0 is 32 degrees Fahrenheit, so it does work. So it's important to understand what we've done here. We've created an object to become a view model, the temperature range object, and it became the data source for our picker view. And by doing so, it had to adopt the UI picker view data source protocol. And let's go ahead and make sure our view controller, our view controller no longer implements the UI picker view data source. Okay? Our temperature range object does do it. Okay, so it seems things to be working a little bit better. We've extracted some of that functionality out of our view controller to where it's supposed to be. And now we only have a few more things to do.